Right now, there are some significant new changes to vaccine guidance for your children.
The CDC just announced that it is updating its childhood immunization schedule to recommend fewer vaccines, despite the opposition from the American Academy of Pediatrics. Your reporter Taylor Knight live in our studio to explain what this means for parents and children.
Well, this really means just fewer vaccines. Under these new guidelines, the CDC recommends all children be vaccinated against 11 diseases, which is down from the 17 previously recommended. Health officials will continue to recommend some common vaccines that protect against the measles, mumps and rubella, polio, chickenpox, and HPV. But they're narrowing recommendations for vaccination against other diseases like hepatitis A and B, the flu, and rotavirus to children who are at a higher risk for infections. Dr. Ian Michaelo, the head of pediatric infectious diseases from Connecticut Children, says that he's concerned that these new guidelines are putting doubt into parents' minds.
I'm concerned that people will start thinking that the previous recommendations, which we've always trusted, are no longer trustworthy. And I think that what that's going to do is make people feel less confident that the vaccines that we have available are safe and effective, which is just going to erode their confidence, which means that fewer people may decide to get those vaccines.
Dr. Michaelo says that he will continue to have open and honest discussions with parents about vaccines. He urges parents to talk to their kids' pediatrician if they have any questions or concerns. Your reporter live in studio, Taylor Knight, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, Taylor, thanks.